So I want to do like a series of videos where hopefully by the end we can come up with what the optimal human diet would be. For sure, there's some variations between individuals. Some people have certain intolerances for certain foods. It doesn't mean that they're innately bad. So it's just that some people don't tolerate certain foods. So I think that it's quite reasonable to say that there is a variation somewhat in the diet. But each mammal, each animal has and it's funny that we actually know what each animal's optimal diet is, but when it comes to humans, we're completely confused. So I'm going to draw a lot in these following videos on a book called Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. It's by Weston Price. In fact, the reason that I want to really use this book a lot in the following videos is that, in my opinion, this is actual research and sound science. I'll read the back of the book to give you an idea what the book is about, and I highly suggest that you purchase this. An epic study demonstrating the importance of whole food nutrition. So we'll find out, hopefully in this series, what whole food is really, because we hear currently the whole food plant-based diet. Now, if you're going to connect the word whole food to plants, then it makes sense that plants should have every single nutrient that is required to be optimal. However, as we know, in the plant kingdom, there are a lot of nutrients, minerals, essential fats that are lacking. Not to mention that it's no secret that plant proteins don't have optimal amino acid profiles. They're lacking either essential amino acids or something like soy, which is, the food, the plant-based super protein. Soy does have all the essential amino acids. However, some of the essential amino acids are present, so you could say it contains all the essential amino acids, but they're at very low levels. So even soy, the epitome of vegan protein, is not comparable to animal food. The protein that is a complete protein that's bioavailable, that's easily digested, as well as not having a lot of the other possible compounds in plants that may be problematic. We look at nutrients, vitamins. A lot of them will appear on the nutritional facts, for example, like iron. So spinach might appear to have a lot of iron. However, it's non-heme iron. And animal food, red meat, for example, has heme iron. Heme iron is what the body easily absorbs and requires. We look at red blood cells, it's called hemoglobin because it needs heme iron. Non-heme iron, which is predominantly found in plants, is not easily digested. So a lot of the nutritional facts that we see on the sides, or when we look things up, we'll see iron very high in spinach, but it's non-heme iron. So if we're comparing just amounts and we're not looking at the absorption and bioavailability, then we're going to get confused and we're not going to really understand things properly. And if we don't understand the details and we're looking at things very superficially, then in the end we'll be duped. We'll basically be completely confused. So when we talk about whole food plant-based diet, if there's lacking things in the plant kingdom that we need for our body, that's essential for our body, then you really can't even call a whole food plant-based diet a whole food. It's just a catchphrase. It's just something that they repeat in media, and we end up just subconsciously accepting it. And we also put a lot of faith in the science. We put a lot of faith in associations and foundations. But if we don't look superficially and go a little bit deeper, you'll see that a lot of these associations that really sound impressive are funded either by big food corporations, and they have a lot of conflicts of interest. So if we're going to call plants whole food, let's look at the essential fats. We have omega-3 and omega-6 that is essential, that is found in animal foods. There's no problem there. Omega-3 in the form of DHA and EPA is very abundant in all animal foods. We have it in milk, we have it in eggs, we have it in every single meat, from pork to, we often hear the omega-3 that is high. Sometimes we'll hear about eggs, and then after we'll hear a lot about the fatty fishes, which do have a very high amount of omega-3, but all animal foods have a certain amount of omega-3 as well as omega-6. Those are the two essential fats that we need. In the plant kingdom, we find an abundant amount of omega-6, however, a very small amount of omega-3. You'll hear vegans talk about chia seeds, hemp seeds, these various seeds. There is omega-3 in the form of ALA that is available in the plant kingdom. However, this ALA omega-3 is poorly converted into DHA and EPA, which your body needs. Your brain has a high concentration of DHA. Omega-3 is very important for brain function, as well as many precursors, anti-inflammatory molecules, many other things. Without going into too much detail, ALA in the plant form, if you're trying to consume a whole food plant-based diet and you think that you're receiving your essential omega-3s not merely at a level that prevents deficiencies, but at an optimal, abundant level, so that you're optimal, the fact is plants cannot offer you the optimal amount of omega-3. The ALA is converted or available, I believe EPA is only 6% and DHA is 3.8%. So what I'm saying is the ALA omega-3 that vegans think that they're receiving abundantly, you have to really realize that only about 6% of the DHA is available to them. They're losing 94%. Now this is also if it's eaten with saturated fat. So the saturated fat helps the absorption. If you're not getting these hemp seeds and these vegan or plant-based omega-3s with enough saturated fat, that is further reduced by 50%. So now we're talking about 3% for DHA and 1.8% for the EPA. Right there, by saying that plant-based is a whole food plant-based diet, you can't attach whole food to plant-based diet because it's not giving you the essential omega-3s in a sufficient amount that would be the wholeness of that type of diet. The plant kingdom has D3, vitamin D3. The plant kingdom has vitamin D2. However, our body requires vitamin D3. This is found abundantly in animal foods. However, in the plant kingdom, it's D2. Now, there is a possibility that there's a certain amount of conversion that can occur into D3, but this is not well known, and what is known about it is that it varies tremendously throughout the population. So D3 is an issue in a whole food plant-based diet. K2 is abundant in animal foods as well as K1. But in the plant kingdom, you don't have the K2. So you're lacking that essential fat, that fat-soluble vitamin. Not to mention vitamin A in plants is beta carotene, but we need retinol. So again, this whole food plant-based diet cannot provide you with enough vitamin A in a retinol form. Beta carotene has a huge discrepancy between individuals, how much they can use beta carotene. The conversion rate can range from 5% to 65%. So at best, you're a little bit more than half. So you're losing again, 40% to almost 95% of the beta carotene some individuals can't use properly. And animal foods, it's bioavailable in the retinol form. We have issues with mineral absorption. Again, iron is absorbed in animal food with its non-heme iron in plants. So heme iron is required, and in plants you got the non-heme iron. So we have issues with absorption, issues with bioavailability in the plant kingdom. There's a lot of talk about phytonutrients, the benefits of antioxidants, but this is largely unproven. The true benefits of these molecules are very questionable. First of all, antioxidants are a good thing. However, our body has natural antioxidant mechanisms that can neutralize radical oxygen species, which is the whole point of antioxidants. It reduces oxidative stress in the body. However, if you're eating, and hopefully we'll get to the bottom of what is the optimal nutrition and optimal diet, what type of food we should be eating by the end of this series. If we're eating that, then we should be able to deal with the oxidative issue in our body through the glutathione mechanism. So even if there are antioxidants in plants, are they essential? Do they really have a health benefit to eating these antioxidants? I don't think so. I think that our body can neutralize oxidative stress with its own mechanisms. So it might look good on paper that there's antioxidants in some fruits and vegetables. However, really, is it essential? And I believe that it's actually quite overhyped. Let's get back to just reading the back of the book, give you an idea, because this is basically Weston Price. This is where I'm going to really go, and we're going to help. It's really going to be a fundamental tool to figuring out what kind of diet is optimal, and you're going to figure out and understand why very soon, if I can get to the point. So let me read the back. An epic study demonstrating the importance of whole food nutrition and the degeneration and destruction that comes from a diet of processed foods. For nearly 10 years, Weston Price and his wife traveled around the world in search of the secret to health. Instead of looking at people afflicted with disease symptoms, this highly respected dentist and dental researcher chose to focus on healthy individuals and challenged himself to understand how they achieved such amazing health. Dr. Price traveled to hundreds of cities in a total of 14 different countries in his search to find healthy people. He investigated some of the most remote areas in the world. He observed perfect dental arches, minimal tooth decay, high immunity to tuberculosis, and overall excellent health in those group of people who ate their indigenous foods. He found when these people were introduced to modernized foods such as white flour, white sugar, refined vegetable oils, and canned goods, signs of degeneration quickly became quite evident. Dental caries, deformed jaw structures, crooked teeth, arthritis, and a low immunity to tuberculosis became rampant among them. Dr. Price documented this ancestral wisdom, including hundreds of photos in his book, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. When we're looking at nutritional science that is often seen in the media, the issue with this is that it's epidemiological studies. So epidemiological studies are food surveys sent out to groups of individuals or large populations. They fill out these food questionnaires, and then they look at that area's disease statistics, and they try and see if there's any links, associations. When most people hear something like it's associated with this disease, or it increases the risk, or there's a link, they think that it basically is saying it causes. We cannot prove that things cause something when we're looking at epidemiology. Epidemiology is merely associations, and it's basically statistics. There are many associations that are not causes. I've used the analogy of police being associated with crime, or firemen being associated with fires. It doesn't mean that they cause the fire. So nutritional science is pretty much garbage. I pop up often nutritional science, but it's just to show that a lot of the nutritional science that media uses for corporate gain to influence what we think is healthy, so that we're buying what they want us to buy. And we think now, because of that propaganda, that it's healthy. This is epidemiological studies. I often pop up the epidemiological studies in many of my older videos to show that there's just as many other studies that say the very, the exact opposite. I can, in my past videos, I've popped up that, shows studies that dietary cholesterol has no influence on LDL, that LDL is a poor risk factor for heart disease, that saturated fat does not cause heart disease. And those are also studies that are pretty much epidemiological. You'll hear stuff like cohort studies, which is basically, they'll just look at a large amount of studies, let's say, and they'll just go through all those studies, and they'll come to a conclusion, or basically a resume of all of these studies, what they concluded. So nutritional science has been, first of all, it's based on food questionnaires, mostly epidemiological or observational studies. You cannot take out all of the other factors that could be causing disease. For example, these people fill out the food questionnaires. We don't necessarily know if they're smoking over 20 to 30 years after filling out the food questionnaire. We don't know if they're doing drugs. We don't know if there's environmental toxins. We don't know any of the other factors that can be influencing their health. To do sound nutritional science, you would basically have to lock people up, feed them exactly what you want to control and test for, create two groups and make sure they're eating exactly that, and watch them over 40 years and make sure they don't smoke or do coke or whatever. That's almost impossible. So there's the problem with nutritional science. When we look at Weston Price, what he did, he went to isolated regions and compared those regions with modernized regions. So the first one that we can look at is isolated and modernized Swiss. So he went into the Swiss Alps, and he found people who were isolated from any of modern living or nutrition. These people living in the Alps lived primarily on milk. They made buttermilk. They made cheese. The milk came from cows that were grazing on pasture within the valleys in the Alps. They also lived on rye bread, so it was not modified white flour. It was rye bread. And when we look at their diet, it was quite simple, right? They lived on dairy products and rye. The amount, they did eat meat. However, that was almost limited to Sundays. It was once a week. They didn't limit the meats because it was unhealthy and they knew something about meat being unhealthy, that we should limit it. It's just that it was limited. They used the animal products that they used primarily were derived from the cow's milk. This was, cows that were grazing, so they're grass-fed cows. They were out, in the valleys. They weren't locked up in feedlots or anything like that. Weston Price looked at these indigenous people that were isolated. They had under 1% caries, so they didn't have any caries. They had well-formed nasal, their noses were well-formed basically. So he was able to look at the bone density, the bone structures, many health factors, and what he saw was the bridges of their nose were fully developed, were a lot wider. They had larger dental arches. They had no caries. They had well-developed facial structures. And this was due to the high nutrient content, the vitamin contents that were found in the food. There was rich quality of soil. It was pasture raised. It was grass fed. It was very important. They made cheese so that they would have that over the winter. They had no fruits, and besides the rye bread, they had no vegetables. So by looking at this first chapter in his book, Isolated and Modernized Swiss, we can see that these people did not consume fruits. However, they had exceptional health. They were physically robust. They were extremely healthy. They didn't have any tuberculosis either. So we often, I was literally told, I always found it weird, like, why do most of us get our wisdom teeth pulled? Like, why don't those teeth fit in our face? I heard it was something about evolution. The truth is that we lack many nutrients, and because of that, our bones don't fully develop. We often have chiseled jaws that aesthetically has become attractive. However, it's actually a very narrow jaw is a sign of nutrient deficiencies. The milk that they were consuming was not pasteurized. In Canada, we cannot get raw milk. It's illegal. All of the fat-soluble vitamins, all of the nutrients that are available in milk are completely destroyed, to the point of milk needing to be fortified with vitamin D here in Canada. So what are you really getting out of milk? Well, first of all, most of the people are being told to drink skim milk. So you're not getting any fat. You're not getting any of the fat-soluble vitamins that aren't there anyways because pasteurization destroyed it. So we look at, we hear stuff about hormones being pumped into the milk. In Canada, it's hormone-free. But we have to understand that the largest issue that right now we can come to a conclusion about is that nutrient deficiencies is a huge problem today, currently, it's not all about calories. So when they compared the isolated Swiss to the modernized Swiss had access to white flours, marmalades, jams. They started to, use the white flour. They had canned goods, and they saw that these Swiss, genetically the same as the isolated, people of that area in Switzerland, they had 30% caries. They had teeth malformations. They had abscesses. They had tuberculosis. So we see that nutrient deficiencies will lead to some kind of immune defense reduction. That's pretty much it. The chapter shows pictures. Let me show you the pictures of the teeth. Maybe I'll pop it up. So these were the isolated. They had very good dental hygiene. And the same Swiss that became infected with modern man and our ways, we see that there was a big deterioration in overall health. So the first thing in this episode, we can come to the conclusion is that these people were extremely healthy. They had no access really to fruits. It wasn't native to that area. So why were they so healthy without fruits? Because in our society now, the idea that you're not eating fruits. No, I don't eat fruits. Oh, well, you know what? That's really unhealthy. You're missing out on all the phytonutrients. You're missing out on all the antioxidants. What about the vitamin C? All of these things have been ingrained in our mind that fruits are essential to optimal health. Now, I'm not saying that they're poison. What I'm saying is that we will look at many, many different areas. I think that this is sound science. These are not food questionnaires. This is looking at two groups, Swiss that are isolated and Swiss that have been infected with modernization. And they compare health and they see the deterioration. He's able to look at those factors. He's able to look at what has changed. Why are the isolated group healthy? What are they eating? What is their lifestyle? And what has changed to cause the deterioration? Here in the West, we're looking at diseases. So we're looking at sick people and we're trying to find the mechanisms of what causes that sickness. He's doing the complete opposite. He's looking at healthy individuals and what they're doing. The problem is that this was probably in the early 20th century that he was doing this research. I think this was around 1930 here that he went to that area. At this point now in 2020, there's no more healthy area. Everything's been modernized. So you don't have the capacity to have this, in a way, true science where you have a group that is doing A and a group that is doing B, and then comparing and saying, what's happened? What has changed? Basically, what had changed was they incorporated white flour. There's nothing wrong with grains, but realize that the grains were supplementing the animal foods to add calories. The rye bread was probably way more nutritious anyways. I'm not saying that rye bread is devoid of nutrition, but it wasn't genetically modified. It was a source of carbohydrates and some nutrients. However, the bulk of their nutrition, the bulk of the fat-soluble vitamins that they were receiving was from the products that they got from the milk, from the well taken care of cows that were eating their native, the cows were eating what they were supposed to. They were doing what they were supposed to. They were taken care of. They were pastured. They were killed humanely. There was a small amount of meat, but it wasn't restricted because it was unhealthy. It was basically restricted because meat was valuable and they didn't have full access to it. So anyways, for this first episode, we look at the isolated Swiss that had a very low amount, besides rye bread, of vegetables in their diet, as well as fruits in their diet. So maybe we've come to the conclusion a little bit closer to understanding that perhaps fruits and vegetables are not essential for human health.